Okay. Okay, now you can go ahead and start. Thank you, Dennis.
Good, good. I'm glad the bio's not in there because I don't like that person very much, actually. Don't you think so, Doran? Oh, geez, oh, Pete. Yeah, my wife must have wrote that, not me. Good afternoon. This is a privilege to be here today to talk about something that is, I know, near and dear to my heart, and I know near and dear to probably 2 or 3 people on this webinar. So it's just a pure pleasure to be here to talk about it. We have some very good fellows that are on this call. Some as new as Randy, who got it last year. Congratulations, Randy.
Thank you.
To Dennis and Sherry Hammond, who have it. Ella has it. And of course, Doran has it. And I don't see anybody else listed that would have that degree. So my goal today is that we want this to be informational. Earning the fellowship degree is a challenge. Basically, it is a challenge. Not everybody gets it on their first attempt. Some fortunate people have. Randy, Ella, myself, but others have struggled to get to it. Take them 2 or 3 times. And yet those people are the ones that probably relish that degree more because of the journey that they were on to get where they ended up. And so we want this to be informational. So I want questions. I want to know your fears. I want to know your questions. I want to know your aspirations to how we can help you to get there. Doran is my co-chair this year, and with me and him and Dennis and some of the other fellows, hopefully we can answer all of your questions. I'm going to tap onto Randy because being the most recent fellow, let him explain his process of going through it, how he maybe selected some of his images, how he worked on his paper, things like that. What I'd like to how I'd like to start this morning is to let Doran explain maybe some of our rules and start with the basics of the rules. And then we're going to talk about some of the finer points of submitting for the ASP Fellowship. All right. So Doran, you want to handle that for us?
Sure. You know, one of the very first things that you have to do is make a determination that you want to take this journey. And you have to have your PPA master's degree. It could be in wedding, artist, or photographic, whichever one you have. And then you have to have 15 additional print merits after that. And then you have to write a 2,000 word personal paper. They used to be called a thesis. It still may be listed that way, but it is actually just a personal paper. It's not actually a thesis. I think I've been associated in working the fellowship for about 18 years. And I think one of the things that most people that I have seen get really confused is they pull out all of their loan images, or if they have, you know, 5 or 6 100s and they try to submit those. But when you put together the portfolio, which is 25 images, they have to work as a body of work. PP of A and everything that we've ever seen judged, the judges are looking at one image at a time. The fellowship, the judges look at all 25 images at one time. They are displayed on a custom-made wall that's 8 feet tall and 20 feet long. And there's 3 rows that the images go on. You as the submitter have to tell the committee how you want your images displayed. We don't randomly put them up. You tell us how you want them put up, and that's how we put them up, and the judges look at them at that point in time. The first thing the judges do is they get your personal paper beforehand so they have time to read it, reread it, make notes on it. And then there is, during the judging, the judges discuss the personal paper. And then there's discussions, and then there is a vote on your personal paper. And it takes 4 out of the 5 judges to approve the paper before it is passed. And then the judges get up and examine your portfolio. This example that we're seeing here is Greg Daniels. His were all portraits printed on canvas because that's what he does. That signifies Greg. And then there's a discussion on it. And then there is a vote on the portfolio, in favor or not in favor. Again, 4 out of 5 judges have to approve it. And then there is one final vote to bestow fellowship, and that is, do they want to bestow the fellowship on the candidate?
Do you want to
That's
take
pretty much the process.
So as you can see, all of these layouts that are scrolling through here, this is how they had the committee set them up on the wall. So it becomes very important that you lay out your images so that they work together as a body, like Doran was saying. So like the elk on the bottom of this one, I think it's an elk, he's looking into the portfolio, and the chicken at the top, right, left, is looking the other way. So you're trying to make it so that the committee sees a cohesive working within. Now, in this particular portfolio, if you stuck 100 printed here that you got in print competition of a bride, then all of a sudden this body of work does not work together because the bride becomes an image that doesn't fit with the theme or the feeling of everything else that's here. And that's probably the biggest thing that Doran and I have seen over the years, is that people are just trying to submit their best work. That's not important. The body needs to work together. One of the images in my portfolio when I got my fellowship, which is a long time ago, the best score it ever got at PPA was a 76. And yet it worked in the portfolio to make my 25 images come together. So that's what we're trying to get across, is that they need to work together. Sometimes it's as simple as taking, you might have half your portfolio in color and half of it in black and white. And sometimes the judges will recommend just turn the whole thing to black and white. And once you do that, then you get it. So the other thing I guess that I would tell you is that you need to find a mentor to help you through this process, because it's a daunting process. It's not a cheap process, and you want as much help as you possibly can get to put your best foot forward. Wouldn't you agree, Doran?
Yes, but I mean, most of the fellows that I have ever talked to are more than willing to help somebody with their selection. I know that when I did mine, I had help. I started with 100 images, and it got whittled down to the 25. And what you really have to do is, if you have a favorite photograph of your granddaughter or grandchild, and you want to put it in there, but it doesn't work with everything else, you have to be willing to let that image go. I know that there was a candidate, when Dennis said, some people get it the first time, I think I have seen at least two people get it on their 5th attempt. So, but some of those, one person kept wanting to hold on to images that didn't work together, and it was panel after panel saying the same thing. Then they finally changed and they wound up getting it. And the one thing too is, if you're talking about like Michael Barton here, he's talking, he has flowers in his portfolio, but if his paper, we're talking about his portrait photography and the way he handles portraiture and everything, but then there's flowers, there's not a cohesiveness there. So your paper has to talk about the prints, but not individual prints, if that makes sense.
What we want the paper to show is your journey to get from where you started to the images that you created that are in your portfolio. And referencing some of them does help within that, but we don't need, but be very careful when we talk about the journey that we want to hear about. I don't need to know that you took a photography class in high school or college, or we just need to know what got you from starting to creating images to creating the beautiful images that you're creating today. And that might be life experiences. It might be somebody that mentored you or helped you, or something that clicked within your mind. That's what we want your paper to reflect, so that we know what makes these images personal to you.
I know that there's papers that you can download here on the website and read through those. That's a great resource for those looking to, move that way.
Yeah. The other thing that I have heard probably more than in the last couple of years is that you can't be a portrait photographer and receive your fellowship. And that really can't be farther from the truth, as long as you're selecting the right 25 images. So it doesn't matter what you're choosing to do. What matters is that the portfolio works together.
A great example is Maz's that's up here right now.
Right.
Very colorful, because he's from England, and he photographs a lot of Indian brides and stuff, which have a lot of color in their dresses and stuff, but it worked as a body of work.
And the other thing is every folio that I've seen judged that has received the fellowship has two things: impeccable quality and stunning visual appearances. So, don't pull them off the wall and send them in. Make sure that these are prints made specifically for this,
And the print quality has to be almost beyond what you would deliver to your client.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I've had a few people that have had their images shipped directly from their lab or place of printing directly to me. And I can't tell you strongly enough that I think that's a huge mistake. You should always look at your images before they hit my doorstep. Just to trust somebody else to print them and to send them is, in my opinion, a huge mistake.
Gabriel's portfolio was portraiture, and he got it.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
So-
I actually had extra prints printed out, laid them out on the floor, and rearranged them all and booted out a couple that didn't work, rather than.
And some of them
Yeah.
can be your favorite image.
Exactly. Yep.
I know that's the way I was with mine.
So Randy, you're the most recent fellow that's on this call that I remember being on this call. What was your process? How did you select your images? How did you go about through the process that you dealt with?
Well, I started out with looking for help. Like you said, finding a mentor and talking to Greg Daniels. And we talked a little bit, and I kind of, because besides doing architecture, I do a few other things. And I decided that I wanted to do architecture, and I even made it more specific, the architecture I'd photographed in Europe. And so Greg, I already had a folder full of images that I just, when I thought something was good enough for the fellowship, I'd put it in there. And Greg basically said, pick your top 50 and send them to me, And so I had to narrow it down to what I thought my top 50 were. And then, sent them to Greg, which Greg went ahead and took a look at them. It's great to have somebody else, especially at that point, take a look and say, who's done this, and say, this group, these work together. And he kind of he sent it back to me with kind of a arrangement that he thought in the top 25. And then I looked at it and I made a couple edits and sent it back to him. And, we did this a couple times until we came up, I think, with the grouping that worked. And even that got changed a little bit towards the end. But having Greg help me, and I talked to other people too. I talked to Dennis Hammond when we were in Maryland about it. And at the end, showing Ralph and Cindy Romagara, I'm saying that right? About it. And Ralph said I needed to change a couple of things, which I did. And I think it was a good suggestion. And then also was told that my paper, and this is where I think a lot of it goes, is the paper. I mean, I thought I had it. I thought I had it done well, but then after they read it, they basically said, Randy, as it sits, it will not work. And this is a week before it was due. So, yeah. So I went ahead and with help, luckily, I have a sister-in-law who does a lot of production for Discovery Channel. And between her and I in that week, basically rewrote it and sent it in. But I think whatever time frame you think you have and you think it's going to take to do it, give yourself a lot more. I mean, I gave myself a lot of time, and I found out at the end I'm just running around crazily trying to do it. So give yourself more time than you think you're going to need to do it. And for me, like you said, I didn't want it to be a biography of my life. And I ended up kind of going through it and talking about people or experiences that got me to where these images were, because these are pretty much of some things I've done in the past 10 years or less. And, how did I get to that point? What started me? Who are the people that, influenced me? And then here's the work. And I really didn't talk about any specific image in the paper. Matter of fact, I think it's kind of in your mailboxes now, but hasn't already got there. Right there, it's coming out right now. I got a copy of it today, so you can see what's there. But that's kind of how I approached it. And I get help, get mentors, ask people. To me, that was probably the biggest thing, and that's probably why I got it, my first try, is because I went ahead and asked for help, listened to them, I mean, listen, I mean, you make your own decisions, but listen to what they're saying, why they're saying it, and go from there. Does that kind of help, Dennis?
Yep. Sherry, I'm going to ask you to give your experience, because you're a little farther down the chain than Randy as far as when you got yours.
Well, my experience was like a lot of others, and Dennis jokes about having temper tantrums. It wasn't that bad, but yeah, I loved images, and it was hard to let go of the ones that didn't work. And I made 4x6 or whatever size prints to lay them out on the floor, and went through different arrangements until it came together, how it best suited the whole body. And as far as writing, I am not a writer. When I first wrote my paper, it was kind of like a timeline bio. This happened then, this happened at this time period, this happened then. Luckily, my best friend's a English and literature teacher, and she's taught at every academic level that's out there. And so she helped me write my paper, and she was a rough teacher. But after a lot of back and forth and a lot of red ink corrections later, we came up with the paper that I ended up submitting.
So what you're hearing is that between both Sherry and Randy, they had help. They didn't do it alone. Not that it can't be done alone, but they've worked with experiences of other people that had already received the degree. That's Sherry made a good point. My paper was edited by an English instructor and then sent to another person that had that degree, English degree. So it was looked at by 2 or 3 different people. So don't be afraid to use the resources that you have around you to create the best possible portfolio and paper before you send them to us. So
I think that's one of the reasons this kind of a meeting is so important, because when I did my fellowship, I didn't know it was okay to ask for help. So I didn't. But I'm really glad that we're putting it out there and letting people know that's perfectly fine and actually preferable.
well,
We want to see people succeed at this. And
Right.
it's definitely okay to get help. And, you know, when I said immaculate prints, you know, Randy's prints, I getting old, can't remember, but I believe they were all on metal, which if he would have put his prints on a matte surface paper, my personal opinion, as somebody that could have been sitting there, which I was not, probably would not have worked because the subject didn't go with a matte finish on the paper, but it worked significantly well with the metal. So, you know, if you're doing, you know, something that requires more of a pastel-y look, then a matte paper might be okay. But what you don't want to do is have 2 or 3 pieces that are on matte paper, and then the rest of them are on a glossy or an e-surface type of paper.
well, and this year, just a second, Chris, this year, not only was Randy's on a metal print, but then Joe Glida was more on a flat matte surface because of his airplanes. And they picked the correct medium for their portfolio. All right, Chris, you had a question?
Yeah, so it's the printing, it's the what paper to choose, that I mean, I have my portfolio together, but I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. One of the questions I have is, if you go on glossy or metal, how is the lighting in the room? I'm a little bit afraid of reflection and that kind of thing, because I don't know how they're going to be lit and who's going to be watching them that way.
The lighting is set up exactly the way PP of A. If you remember back in the day when you could enter prints at PP of A, the lighting is set up exactly the same, same color, temperature, and everything. But remember, the wall is 8 feet long, or
Right.
8 feet tall, 20 feet long. So the judges don't sit in one spot. They get up and look at the prints at whatever angle they need to eliminate any of the glare or anything of that nature. So that
makes
you
me
don't
feel
have
better.
to worry about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And
if
And
it's
is
on
the
a
whole,
glossy, like
so the whole wall is lit and not individual prints are lit?
the whole
Correct.
wall is lit.
The whole wall
Okay.
has the same exposure across, all the way across.
Oh,
So-
okay. And
And
it's
like I said, it's PP of A. It's 1 second at f16, ISO 100.
Yep, same requirement. So, but being that we're trying to light a huge wall and not just a little turnstile, and you have the wrong surface like Randy did with high gloss metal prints, as you're sitting there at that table, 1 or 2 of those images may have a glare to them or a shine to them. That's why you're allowed to get up and look at them, because
Okay.
there's just no way we can make it any other way.
Okay. That helps a lot to
Okay.
visualize
So
what.
whatever surface you feel your images deserve, you pick that surface, and it will.
Okay.
We make it work.
Okay.
And
That-
Dennis, it's, you know, it's being judged as a group of images and also individual images. Am I correct on that? They're looking at each individual image along with looking at how it works together as a group of images and how it relates to your paper.
Yes, and Doran will probably reinforce this, but there's been many times when the judges will say, you know, I don't think that image number 6, because we have them all in front of us, image number 6 works in this portfolio as well as I'd like to have it, but, or number 24, or even number 13. You can have 2 or 3 images that aren't solid, powerful images. And when it comes down to it, they still give you the fellowship because your whole body of work works together. So you don't have to have 25 spectacular images that work together, but you've got to have 25 images that work together. Right, Doran?
Yes, I mean, it's one of those, if you have, and we talk to the judges and we try to tell them, say, you know, if there's, but again, we don't tell them what to do. It's their personal opinion. Dennis and I, as the committee, we have no say whatsoever. It's not like a PP of A judging where a JC has a vote or something of that nature. We only facilitate.
Right.
We have no say in if somebody gets it or if they don't get it. We let them do all the talking. They talk amongst themselves. But we do try to guide them and say, you know, if there's 1 or 2 images that you think might fall just a tad bit short, may not necessarily take it out of fellowship contention.
Are there any other questions for us?
I have one. So I'm assuming so you could have an image that merited in, I guess it's not MIR, merited in MIR, but you don't have to use, you could take that image and you can alter it, I guess is what I'm saying. And so you can change I just want to make sure people understand it doesn't have to be like what you submitted in competition. You can change it. You can change it to black and white. You can paint it. You can, you know, just because all those rules are out the window as far as re-entering something.
Yes, actually, if everybody could put in their mind and don't even think of this is what I entered in PP of A, that would be great, because whatever you enter there, this has nothing to do with it whatsoever.
I would say almost half my image. Oh, I'm sorry, Dennis. I would say half my images were never entered in PPA competitions. You know, they were just, you know, I took what I thought were my best images that, you know, worked as the group here. So there's a lot of them that have never been entered in PPA at all.
And she makes a good point. Maybe you like the images that you submitted to PPA and it maybe went alone, maybe got 100. But to work in your portfolio, it may need to change to black and white, or it needs to maybe be recropped or something. So yeah, feel free to make those images work together, because we have no reference to what was entered at PPA, nor do we care what was entered at PPA. And I'm not saying that mean, but this is a degree that is separate. It's an ASP degree that ASP gives out and has no connection or involvement with PPA at all.
Tim posted a question in the chat.
I see that.
Yeah, you want to address that?
Tim, you are in the 20 plus years that I've been associated and helping with it. You're right. I have never seen any aerial photography. It doesn't mean that it would not work. Like I said, there's 5 judges. 4 of them have to hold the fellowship degree. The other is a non-fellow. If it's done right, it can be done. I know there was a Ken Fong, I think he was from Japan, years and years ago now. he submitted 8x10 transparencies of food, and he got his fellowship with food. So the gamut runs everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone else entered aliens before me.
Nope,
No,
I don't think so either.
I don't know if anybody knows as many aliens as you do either.
That's right.
The year that I received mine, I think it was 98, 97. One of the gentlemen that entered the same year as Stuart Powers, who was a wedding photographer, entered all paintings like he did in college. They were all acrylic paintings, and he received his fellowship on those 25 images. So
what Dennis and I really try to do is when we get an applicant, they send it in, we actually go and look at their websites, but we also talk to them and see if they're kind of understand what they're going to try to be entering. And then when we pick our panel, we try to make sure there's at least one, if not two, people that would have with kind of an expertise in it. It's kind of like if you're entering weddings at PP of A, you want wedding people doing it, or landscape people. You don't want all baby photographers judging your landscape work. So that is what we try to do when we're pulling a panel together.
Chris, you had another question?
Yeah, I know that it says the image size is 1114 to 16x20. Those are the ranges, I think, of the sizes.
20 by 20.
A 20x20. Does that is that size, like, does it matter if it's on the smaller end or the bigger end? I mean, is there any particular size to pay attention to?
No, not
No.
really. Not that I have ever seen.
Okay.
I've seen, 11x14 size, and they only had, 8x10 prints and 11x14 mats. I've seen, 20-inch prints that with no presentation whatsoever. If you are going to do a presentation or a mat, a physical cut mat, make sure that your physical cut mats are done just as well as your prints are.
I think Joe's was a great example of that, Joe Glida, because he
Yes.
was airplanes, and he actually had beautifully pristine white mats cut out in the shape of a hangar door for each image, and it was so impressive.
And see, that example is perfect because they were airplanes, but the entire presentation worked together because he went to that extra effort of cutting his mats in the shape of an airplane door.
Is that what that was? I'm kidding.
Yeah, I had to explain it to you 3 times, but
I know.
Yeah,
So-
my apologies to our newest fellows that your layouts are not on here yet. We're
Yeah.
working on it.
here's Jamie Hayes's. His were all black and whites with a white presentation. And if you look, he has, the very bottom row, he has horizontals on the very outside, but everything else wound up being verticals. And so, even the shape, and what you really wouldn't want to do is, we'll just say, we'll use Jamie's as an example, where you have those black and whites, but then all of a sudden in your center image, you had a color image in there because it worked. It would pull the attention to where the judges would only be, it'd pull the attention away from everything else. So then the portfolio doesn't work as a whole.
So the question I get a lot is, but I'm a photographer, and you can stop here at this one here, for Gabriel, that I'm a photographer, that I don't just photograph landscapes, or I don't just photograph architecture. I photograph people across the board. And Gabriel's is a good example. I mean, in his portfolio, he has brides, he has children, he has adults, he has full length, he has close-ups, and yet the only really poor choice in there was number 21 on the bottom, which looks like him. That's about the worst choice I've seen, but so you can have your variety, but they have to work together. And in this case, it works. Look at the quality of the lighting, look at the quality of the printing, look at the posing. You know, that's what we're talking about. There's a uniformity that works through all of this. You don't see too many in there that are smiling really big at the camera. So, you know, you put 2 or 3 in there of that, and that may pull this portfolio down. So you're looking for images that work together with what you're trying to say is what you do or what you see as a photographer.
And another thing with Gabriel's is if you can imagine all the different clothing colors that he would have had throughout that portfolio, he chose to submit black and white, which tied everything together at that point in time.
I think Carl Kaler is one who submitted in color once or twice and then switched to black and white, and that did the trick.
He would be down, I believe.
I think
He's a newer one.
Yeah, he's newer, so he'd be up higher.
Oh, higher? Okay.
Yeah.
If you can find Carl's, we never say how many times people submit.
Nope.
There we go.
Yeah. He's
Right.
been open about it, which is the only reason I mentioned it.
And that's up to him. The other thing that the committee will never, ever do is publicly say who the judges were. The judges are kept anonymous for their protection, I'll call it. Because if somebody, and it has happened that it gets ugly with, you know, Dennis is a close friend of mine and he didn't give me the fellowship, and it's caused hardships and friendships to be lost. So we never say who it is. If the judges want to reveal themselves to the candidate, they can, but we ask them not to mention who the other judges were.
And also anybody who doesn't make it is never outed. You know, we never say there were, for instance, 7 people who applied and so didn't get it. That never happens. Yeah.
And when I took over from my predecessors, you never knew if you got it or didn't get it until you showed up at the banquet.
Wow.
And we thought that was wrong. And we started instituting that if you get it, you get a phone call. Those are easy ones for Dennis and I to make. If you don't, those become a lot harder to make. But you are told what the judges felt didn't make it, which we think is absolutely the fair way. So during the judging, you get 3 opportunities for a yes vote. And if the end is a no, you're told why.
So understand, if you don't make it, what we've started doing is we will videotape a little synopsis of what the judges have thought about your portfolio. The judges are still sitting in front of us when we do that, so that if we're done taping that little video, they can say, that's not what we were saying. That's not why we did not award this the fellowship. And then we can retape it so that you get a better understanding of what they're thinking of why they didn't award you the fellowship. But I tell everybody, listen to that video, but then call, because you can't put everything in a 4-minute video. You just can't do it. And there's more context that they give to us that we could pass on to you for future reference as you possibly try for a second time.
And the other thing that I changed when I took over originally years ago is once your portfolio was judged and it was, we'll just say it was judged, as a no, there was no opportunity for it to get brought back. So there could be three people for it, just 2 against it, and it wouldn't make it. So we actually instituted that at the end of the day, any judge can bring any portfolio back for or against. And that has happened numerous times.
Yes.
I have a question. So I know
Uh-huh.
on some of these presentations, the images are titled and some they aren't, some they're numbered. When you're actually viewing the actual presentation for judging, are there titles that show or?
You have to title your images and provide those on a separate piece of paper that's included with your portfolio, but the judges are only looking at numbers. So they're looking at numbers 1 through 25.
So this one, like for Carl that is sitting in front of you, that's probably a 11-inch piece of paper by 7 inches wide that he laid out his portfolio and printed that, and that is what is sitting on the table in front of the judges. So he put the titles underneath so that the judges knew the titles of his images. That's not the way they were on the wall. There's only numbers under them under the wall. So when the judges are referring to one of his images, they would say image number 6, or they'd say image number 21, or image number 14. They would never refer to it by the title.
Just to clarify though, it is the order in which the images are displayed, however the maker puts their layout on a piece of paper for the judges and the committee.
Correct. So
And
we would make the wall look exactly like this. This is how he's laid it out. We would make the wall look exactly like that. And we've had people get very specific, because normally we will pick the distance between the images to make it look right. But we've had people say, I want 0.5, I want a 1/2 inch between each of my images. So we will even honor that request if we can.
Thank
And
you.
Carl may have submitted this to ASP with the titles on it to be posted on the website.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, because we're starting to run out of time. We got like 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure we cover everything that needs to be covered. Dennis, you have anything you want to say?
Yeah. I think we covered everything about what to do, but I think we need to just chat real quickly about how to start preparing and think about it. Dorn brought up, the letter of intent and that type of thing. But, to start going through this, I just felt like it was really difficult to try to sit down and write a paper. I thought it was really difficult to try to go through and pick out my images. So it was over a period of several months of selecting images, putting them into a folder, laying them out. And then I carried a notebook everywhere with me, and I wrote down the thoughts I thought. I read a lot of the old fellow theses of personal papers, and then I just started writing down notes and thoughts to myself. And when I started putting it together, it dredged up a lot of memories and a lot of thoughts of where I started and came from. And so because it really truly does become a personal paper, because it really brings up where you came from and how you got to where you're at. And I just think it's more than just an overnight process. It does take several months of conscientious thinking and thought and research to get into do your paper. So I think that's an important part of getting this. And the other part is I have numerous people ask me for help, and my greatest frustration, and I'm sure you guys have had it as well, is that you offer suggestions and then they go, oh, well, I just like my way better. Well, obviously a lot of them don't get it because, their way doesn't always get it, but it's frustrating that those of us have been in the process, I've been in the community, I've been a fellow for a while and helping people out. But if you ask for someone's help, take it with gratitude and thankfulness and listen to them, because they actually have thoughts and processes for you. So that's what I have to say is just take it with a peace and calm feeling that progress with that.
For me, when I mentioned my first paper was kind of a timeline bio, and so I used that as my base and just kind of filled in the rest of it all around that. And having that timeline kind of helped me keep things in order, and so that helped me a lot.
I
Yeah,
know that when
I-
I know that
Go
when
ahead.
I did mine, me and my wife sat on the deck and we just talked. And she just took notes. And after that, she kind of helped write the paper. And then I'd go, no, it's not really what I want to say. And then we had both of our sons read it. They were in college at the time. And they're like, oh, yeah, I wouldn't phrase it this way. And that's how my paper came about.
And I found out just editing. I kept having to take, I was writing, having to take things out, become more focused. I even had a part in there about my wife and she got edited out. Luckily, she's good with that and I didn't get too much heat. But, I think trying to keep it, I don't know. I don't think you want it to be too long. You want it to be long enough to get your point, get your story across, but not so long that you're going to tire the judges out reading it.
Randy makes a very good point because it's 2,000 words minimum. There is no maximum. But I can tell you that the one that came in with 10,000 words, it was just way too long.
So as I'm looking at some of the stuff over here in the chat area, I see a couple of comments that I've heard many, many times. How do you pick a body of work? And to me, it was very simple because my passion has always been photographing children. So that's what I enjoy. That's what I love. Randy enjoys architecture. That's what his passion is. So go to your passion that you love photographing, and that's where your body of work should come from, because those are the images that are going to show the real you. Don't force a circle into a square box because it's not going to work. Take your strengths, the things that you love doing. Again, let's go take one of last year's entrants, John Hartman. Light painting, that's his passion now. And he had a portfolio that was full of light painting that was absolutely spectacular. So it's within you. You just have to figure out what that is within you that makes you the photographer that you are today, what you love doing, what you're passionate about. And your paper should reflect that.
Yeah, and I think you really have to be focused too. I mean, I am an architecture photographer, but I have a lot of commercial work and all this other stuff. But I focused it down to something that I truly love. I truly love the photographing over in Europe and the history and everything else. So I focused it down from all my architecture work and even the landscape work down to one specific area that I think worked as a much tighter group than just, putting some of those images next to modern architecture would have never worked, I don't think. But having it all be cohesive like that, I think helped it out.
And it's one of those things that this is a process. It is not by any means an easy process. And if you don't make it the first time, don't give up. It's not a personal reflection by any means. There's been more people that probably didn't get it the first time than there are people that have. And you can't give up. I've seen that numerous times where somebody has applied one time and then they just drop the process. But it is not an easy process. And I think it.
Oh, sorry.
And I believe when this started in 1971, I believe it was not meant to be an easy process, and that part has not changed.
Reapplying does not mean you have to reprint your entire portfolio either
Correct.
necessarily,
Right.
nor even read
Uh,
the paper sometimes. The juries are subjective. So,
There's somebody that applied, sent the paper in, and they actually sent the draft rather than the final by accident. So the portfolio passed, the paper failed miserably, and the judges could not bestow fellowship because of that one little mistake. Reapplied the following year, they got it. So as you make sure you keep track of what drafts of your paper you have. Because we all have multiple drafts.
Yep, we do.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
I just want to say, when you get that phone call from Dennis, he calls you up and says, Randy, this is a hard process and not everyone gets it the first try, and it's nothing to do with you or your images. It's just a very hard process. And, the first time most people don't get it. And then he goes ahead and says, luckily for you, you're not one of them. That's a real good phone call.
it is. It's one of the most excellent phone calls of your life.
Okay,
Anybody else? Any other questions? Any other comments?
okay, I'm gonna run through the announcements again real quick for those that came in late. And then we will be done. So registration is now open for Images of Distinction Round 2. You don't want to wait till the last minute because you'll be paying more money. So early bird registration is open until August 1st. And then the price will go up after that. And you have about another week or so. Sorry, I didn't write down that other date. I know I should know all this, but getting a phone call. Sorry. So anyway, that is open now. So start enter early, enter often. Next week's Zoom will be on June 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. The presenter will be Guy T. Phillips, and he will be speaking on masking in Lightroom. There will be no Zoom meeting on July 4th, so we hope you all have a safe and happy holiday. And June 30th is the deadline for turning in your service points for ASP. So if you have not done that yet, you want to get that process started because the end of the month will be here soon. That's all we have for today. Again, Dennis.
Can I add one more thing? Can I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
Just so that everybody on the Zoom knows, we are having a judging this year. We have entrants already. So if you're on the fence thinking, I missed the original deadline, you can still join this party this year if you want. We'll take your money, we'll take your portfolios because we are going to have a judging. So if you want to still submit this year, get on the website, fill out the information and start that process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
And so thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Doran, Dennis, Ella, Sherry, Randy. Your knowledge was very helpful, and it was helpful to hear some of the behind the scenes and how you felt about it and how you chose things. I think that was really powerful in helping people try to decide how they're going to move forward with this. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending, for your participation and questions. And we will see you all next week. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Do I stop recording? Okay.